So it is said by acharyas that only very, very special persons are able to hear and realize and relish the Bhagavad Gita, but especially the middle six chapters. So this analogy I have mentioned before, the Bhagavad Gita is compared to a treasure chest by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, amazing saint from 300 to 400 years ago. He lived here on this planet. He compares the bottom part of the chest to the first six chapters, Karma Yoga, or in other classifications, it can be said the first six chapters cover the journey of the individual from the point of view of the doubt, which is the beginning of spiritual life, to the Guru explaining our identity, that we are not this body, to explaining and understanding the duty, which is the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, to understanding how to receive this transcendental knowledge in the fourth chapter, and fifth chapter, understanding the peace formula, how to be peaceful in this world. Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam Jnatva Mam Shantir Richati. Shantir Richati. You will attain peace if you understand and realize three things. Krishna says, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam, that I am the supreme enjoyer, you are not the enjoyer. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, I am the supreme proprietor and the Lord of all the worlds. You are not the proprietor. So we are not the proprietor of anything, including what might be in our name as property, or even our body and the life here in the body. The Supreme Lord is the proprietor. When we realize that, we already become super peaceful. But the third part of the peace formula is also important, which is Suhridam Sarva Bhutani. So in Sanskrit, in English there is one word, friend. In Sanskrit there are four words for friend, which designate four levels of friendship. There is Saka, Mitra, Bandhu, and then there is Suhrid. Krishna specifically uses the word Suhrid in this verse, which means best of friends, is the highest level of friendship. Suhrid is a person who would give up his own welfare and happiness for you. Suhridam Sarvabhutani. So Krishna is the best friend, that best friend of every living entity. So that was the journey of the individual, which culminated in the sixth chapter, where we saw the art of mind control. Controlling the mind means first understanding we are separate from the mind, and then through abhyasa and vairagya, which is practice and detachment, we control the mind. Then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also compares the top part of the treasure chest, the cover or the lid of the treasure chest, to the last six chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, which is Jnana Yoga, which is also can be classified as being on the topic of this world. What is this world? How did we end up here? Who owns this world? Who controls this world? And what is our role in it, and how to get out of it? But the middle six chapters are compared to the treasure, which is Bhakti Yoga. Specifically, the middle part of the middle six chapters, chapter 9 and 10, which we saw over the last 2 weeks, are the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. We see the topics of how to love, what is love of God or Bhakti in the 9th chapter, and how to love God in the 10th chapter. I will summarize the 10th chapter quickly before we get into the 11th chapter. But before I do, 11th chapter will be Krishna revealing three of his forms, including the Vishwarupa, or the universal form. In popular parlance, chapter 11 refers to bankruptcy, at least in the US. Chapter 11 bankruptcy gives the opportunity for companies which are in distress to declare bankruptcy and reorganize themselves without being liable for what they are liable for at that point. Chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita is comparable, where even after hearing how to love God, many of us might carry misconceptions of who is God and what is our relationship with Him. One common misconception is our inability to accept that beyond the realization of Brahman, which is the impersonal realization of absolute truth, beyond the realization of Paramatma, which is the personal divinity in our heart, Krishna is Suhridam Sarva Bhutani, because he sits in everyone's heart and is waiting for us to turn towards him. That Krishna is known as Paramatma. So realization of Paramatma is above the realization of Brahman. But ultimately the realization of Bhagavan, the Supreme Person, is higher than even realization of Paramatma. The misconception that the formless Supreme is topmost is especially bankrupted in the chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita, where he shows his personal forms. And the 12th chapter is very, very wonderful. It's the shortest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which we will see next week. Yamuna Prabhu will take us through. The 12th chapter takes us through who is dear to God, the devotee, the characteristics of that Mahatma who becomes a pure devotee of the Lord. Very wonderful chapter, only 20 verses. Today's 11th chapter has 54 verses. Very wonderful. In the last chapter we saw last week, Krishna began by declaring he is the source of all. He told Arjuna, because he is his suhrid, he is his best friend, he will declare this most confidential knowledge, which is superior to anything he has spoken before. We saw how this is superior because he explains how to love God. 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he explains what is love of God. 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he explains how to love God, which is even more superior and confidential knowledge. Then he declares once and for all, he is the source of everyone and everything. Further, we saw the Chatusloki verses. Just like a zip file holds a lot of files, but you can email it, and when the person unzips it, everything expands and comes out. Just like that, the Chatusloki verses contain the essence and in fact, they contain all the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita in 4 verses, which cover 3 topics: Abhidaya, Sambandha, Abhidaya, and Prayojana. Sambandha refers to the constitutional relationship between the living entity and God. Abhidaya refers to acting in that relationship. How does one who is in that constitutional, pure devotional relationship act in relation with God? And Prayojana refers to the ultimate goal of that relationship. We saw those 4 wonderful verses. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddhabhava samanvitaha. I am the Lord of all the world, spiritual and material, O Arjuna. Those who are wise surrender unto me, he says in the first Chatusloki verse. Second, mat chitta mat gata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Krishna says, that person who is wise and who surrenders unto me, he is mat chitta mat gata prana. His prana, his life air, his every action is to please me. Then he goes on to declare, this is the Abhidaya. The Abhidaya, that is the acting in the relationship of pure devotion, is in essence performing all our activities to please Krishna. And then there is the Prayojana, where he says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvagam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Such a person who acts in devotion of me, who is always thinking of me, who does everything for my pleasure, to such a person, I light the lamp of knowledge in his heart to expel the darkness of ignorance, Krishna says. Very beautiful. This is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. If we unpack this, we get the entire contents of the 700 verses. In Arjuna, who was going through many steps, just like we would have heard in common parlance, the different steps of grief, denial, acceptance, denial, anger, acceptance, and so on. Uh, Arjuna is also going through 5 steps in the Bhagavad Gita. He begins with becoming depressed and getting confused, but slowly, he is going through these 5 steps and he is getting to a point of clarity. So, for the first time in the Bhagavad Gita, without questioning why, he has understood why and he wants to know how. And before he wants to know how to love God, he declares the supremacy of Krishna. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Mama. Oh Krishna, I understand you are the Supreme Person. He declares that for the first time in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna accepts Krishna's supremacy. Beautiful verse. Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adi Devam Ajam Vibhu. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, Aja, the greatest. Arjuna calls him Aja, whereas previously at the beginning of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna said, you should receive this knowledge in disciplic succession, and I myself gave the same knowledge to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan gave it to Manu, and Manu gave it to Ikshvaku. Arjuna questions Krishna, how is this possible when you and I are the same age? Vivaswan is a eon older than you. How can you have been present to give him this transcendental knowledge? To which Krishna reminds him that he is eternal, so is all of us. But here, Arjuna has realized that understanding and he is calling Krishna the unborn Aja. Finally, Krishna describes his. So Arjuna wants to know in detail again Krishna's opulences. The 10th chapter is called the opulences of the Absolute for this reason, for this last section of the 10th chapter, where Krishna declares his various opulences. Essentially, Krishna is the essence of everything. Even in the 7th chapter, he said Sutre Mani Gananiva, which means in the pearl necklace, we don't see the thread that holds all the pearls together. Just like that, he is the thread. He is the fundamental principle which holds everything together that we survey. And he declares 82 examples of how he is the essence of everything. But very importantly, at the end of the 10th chapter, Krishna declares, but what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. See, there are smaller infinities and larger infinities. In terms of all living entities, there are 2 classifications. There is the infinite, which is commonly known as Krishna Tattva or Vishnu Tattva, and there is the infinitesimal, all of us. Both categories are same in quality. Both categories of living entities, both Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, are Sat, Chit and Ananda. We are eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss in our constitutional state. Of course, the Jiva has the choice to come under the influence of the spiritual energy or under the influence of the material energy. If we choose to be under the influence of the material energy, we receive this body and we are conditioned by material nature. So we are not Chit and Ananda. It is that those features of us are covered. But once we attain a liberation from this body, we are Sat, Chit and Ananda in our pure state. Within the Vishnu Tattva, there are smaller infinities and there are larger infinities. Just like in mathematics, the set of natural numbers is a very, very big infinity. It contains all natural numbers. Whereas the set of odd numbers is a smaller infinity than that. It is still infinite. There are infinite number of odd numbers, but it is a smaller infinity. Krishna himself is the largest infinity. He is the original Supreme Person. And with just a fragment of his infinite energies, of each of which he has infinite, just a fragment of that, he is able to pervade. He is everywhere in this universe. In every atom, Krishna is present as Paramatma. In every heart of every living entity, not just human beings, every living entity from the smallest germ to the atom, to the largest elephant, Krishna is present in the heart of all living entities. So he pervades throughout this universe and the multiverse, and he supports it with his energies. Only the universe are created; they are supported, and he does this with a small fragment of himself. Ultimately, isn't that the ultimate opulence? To be able to support the entire multiverse, the material universe, with just a fragment, a small fraction of his energies. So Arjuna hears this and he is delighted. And he expresses his gratitude in the very first verse of the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Mad anugrahaya paramam guhyam adhyatma samnitam yat tvayaktom tvayaktam vachastena mohayam vigato mama. Mad anugrahaya, because of your mercy, you have shared this guhyam, this most confidential knowledge with me. My illusion is dispelled. So you can see the stage that in the 5 stages, which is a separate session in itself. At some point, maybe we can take time to discuss the 5 stages of Arjuna, because we also go through the same when we go through a spiritual journey. And one of the stages is clarity. You see here, his illusion is dispelled. He is saying, Moha yam vigato mama. My illusion has now been dispelled. And he's expressing his gratitude, which is the seed of love. By you kindly sharing, Madda Anugrahaya, by your mercy, you are kindly sharing this confidential knowledge, and hence my illusion is dispelled. And then he goes on to describe that he has understood the inexhaustible glories of Krishna. And he specifically calls Krishna Kamala Patraksha. Patraksha means eye, Kamala means lotus, or lotus-eyed one. I find this very interesting. So in the Bhagavad Gita, I counted, and Krishna is referred to by Arjuna by 68 different names. Of course, Krishna, God is infinite, and he has infinite names. But there are primary names and there are secondary names. Primary names indicate his spiritual nature, his spiritual opulence. Material names are with respect to him in this world, which are secondary names. For example, the name Allah, which is used in Islam, is a bona fide name of God, but it refers to his greatness. Allah means the greatest one. So it is a secondary name of God. It also has significant potency when we glorify him using that name. It has significant potency. Ultimately, we are in this world because we are envious of not being the supreme enjoyer, not being the supreme proprietor. We are, in essence, all envy in this world is rooted in that original envy. And because of that avidya, that we are the enjoyer, the ignorance that we are the enjoyer, we are sent to this material world where we kindly are allowed to enjoy by ourselves, but within a very tight circle. It is like the bull that is tied to a pole in the ground with a small rope attached. It can only go within the radius of that rope. It cannot go beyond. But within the radius, it is the king. It can do whatever it wants. Similarly is our situation. So, in order for us to overcome that envy, one of the best ways is to glorify our object of envy. and turn him into our object of love. So, glorifying God is important, and using the holy names of God to glorify Him is a very potent method, especially in this day and age where there is so much entropy and confusion and distractions. Chanting the names of God is a potent method. So, chanting the primary names of God like Krishna, Rama, Govinda, Madhava is especially potent because it indicates his spiritual nature. And further, Arjuna goes on to describe that you said, with a single fragment of yourself, I pervade and support this universe. And Krishna acknowledges, yes, I said that. I wish to see how you have entered into this manifestation. I want to see that form of yours. Very, very interesting. Arjuna wants to see the universal form, the Vishwarupa, the Virat Rupa of Krishna. Why does he want to see this form? That is something I asked myself when I first read the Bhagavad Gita also. First, he wants to help people understand Krishna's glories. How infinite is he? How big is he? As you will see, this form is so infinite in its presence. When we describe this form, you will understand what I am trying to say. And he wants to establish Krishna's divinity once and for all, that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He wants to convince Krishna that he is truthful. Krishna has made statements such as, I am the essence of everything. I am the light from the sun. I am the heat from fire. I am the ability in man to help us when we go through everyday life, when we see maybe our own talents, maybe talents of our family or our colleagues, where they achieve something very nice, we see that as the ability that Krishna has given them. In this way, we are able to constantly remember him. So Smaran, as we saw in the 8th chapter, remembrance is a very integral part of loving someone. So if you love someone, say you have a spouse you love, and you travel without them for official work, when you are in a meeting or when you are in that different country perhaps that you have traveled to, when you look at something, when you think about something, you immediately are reminded by them. For various reasons, you are reminded by them. That is Smaran. In that same way, when one loves God, one is able to see God in everything, including in the ability of man. But Krishna has made these statements. We are the Vishwarupa. Arjuna wants to show us that Krishna is being truthful when he makes these statements. In other words, he wants to show these statements are not examples or allegories, they are literal also. Finally, this reason I find fascinating. Srila Prabhupada gives this reason in the purports. He says Arjuna wants to set a criteria for who is God. Because one thing that does happen in this world is many people come, persons claim they are God. We are God-like, ladies and gentlemen. Each one of us are have the same quality as the divine, but we are infinitesimal in quantity, and He is infinite in quantity. So we cannot be God. If we are God, we have to show the universal form. That is the criteria that Arjuna is setting for anyone who claims to be God. Very, very interesting. So Arjuna then requests Krishna, if you think I am able to behold your cosmic form, then kindly show. And then Krishna says, Paschime Partha Rupani. He gives a trailer of what his cosmic form looks like. This is very brilliant idea to give a verbal explanation, a verbal narration of his form, how his form looks before he shows the form, because this form has not been seen by Arjuna before or by anybody else before for that matter. So it's very, very difficult to take in this form. This is unlike his two-handed form of Shama Sundara, which is human-like. the universal form is very, very difficult to behold. So he gives a verbal narration of the form. He says, all my opulences you will see in this form. You will see thousands, hundreds of thousands of multicolored forms of myself within this form. You will see all the devatas, the demigods, the Adityas, Vasus, Rudras, Ashwini Kumaras, all the devatas you will see within this form. And this form is Adrishta Rupani. This form is never seen before or heard of before by anyone. So it's a very special manifestation just for Arjuna. And finally, in addition to showing the whole universe, which is the Vishwarupa, Krishna will also show the Kala Rupa, which is he will show the past, present, and future in this form. Amazing trailer Krishna is giving. This part is quite difficult to digest when we first go through this part of the Bhagavad Gita, but I find this a very powerful tool to remove our misconceptions of who God is. We limit God within our experiences when we think He is human-like, and we put Him in a box. But this breaks that box. So it is a very important part of Bhagavad Gita for us to go through in our journey to understand that Sammam Bonam, the absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead, is unlimited. It is very important part of our understanding. If we don't understand that He is unlimited, then our understanding of our relationship with Him is incomplete. So this is a very important, even if difficult to realize, part of the Bhagavad. And Krishna himself says, Natumam Shakshyasi Drishtum. Drishtum refers to sight. You cannot see me with these present eyes. You cannot see this form with your present eyes. So I am giving you Divya Chakshu, the divine eyes to see me. Behold my mystic opulence, O Krishna, Arjuna. And when he says that, the movie begins. So the universal form is like a movie or a projection. Okay, normally we see a movie in a screen, right? In either a TV screen, or we see it in a projector screen of some sort where we project the movie. This movie is being projected for Arjuna in addition to giving him the divine eyes to see this movie. So if we are seeing a 3D movie, for example, we need the 3D glasses. Just like that, to see the divine movie, we need divine eyes, divine glasses, which Krishna is giving him. And the screen on which he is projecting this movie is the entire sky. The entire sky he is using to project. So very, very amazing vision he is going to give Arjuna. And at this point, Arjuna stops talking, and Krishna stops also, and there is silence, and the universal form is being shown to Arjuna. And we hear Sanjaya speaking to Dhritarashtra in the background. If you remember, Sanjaya is the disciple of Vyasadeva, and that is where the Bhagavad Gita began, where Dhritarashtra, the uncle and the brother of their Pandava's father, elder brother of the Pandava's father, and the father of the Kauravas, the opposing army, is hearing what is happening in the battlefield from Sanjaya, his servant and the disciple of Vyasadeva. And so we hear Sanjaya speaking, and Sanjaya is struggling to explain this form. How do you explain something that has never been seen by anyone before, which is a higher dimensional projection on the entire sky? Anekavatra nayanam aneka adbhuta darshanam aneka divya bharanam divya aneka dayata ayudam. Aneka, unlimited. Arjuna saw in that universal form unlimited mouths, unlimited eyes. Aneka adbhuta darshanam, unlimited wonderful visions. The form was decorated by many celestial ornaments and bore many divine appraised weapons. This is Sanjaya trying to explain the universal form. Say we go to some event and we come back home, and somebody in the house asks us, how many people came to the event? I mean, let us say it's a big event. Let's say it's the Super Bowl or something, and we wouldn't have sat there and counted how many people came. So we will say, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people came. Just like that, Sanjaya is not able to fully explain this Adrishta Rupani, this never before seen form. So he is using approximations to explain. He is saying Aneka Vatra, Aneka Adbhuta Darshanam, Aneka Divya Baranam, Aneka Dayatha Yudam, several celestial ornaments. The form in a two-dimensional image, perhaps this is what it looked like. You see here, let me take the laser pointer. You see here, this is Arjuna, Krishna is here, and the universal form is being projected for the entire sky. So Dhritarashtra is amazed. What is Sanjaya saying? He's saying suddenly this form has unlimited mouths, unlimited eyes. What is this form? He wants to know how bright is this form. And Sanjaya, struggling to explain this, he says it is as if thousands of suns have risen in the sky. Can you imagine? If one sun rises and it is summertime and it's all clear, no clouds, it's pretty hot and it's pretty bright, right? We wear sunglasses. 1,000 suns rising, can you imagine how that will look? So again, Sanjaya is approximating and trying to describe this brilliant form which is so bright. And Dhritarashtra further wants to know, where is this form displayed? Did Krishna take Arjuna away from the battlefield to show him this form? And Sanjaya says, no, right there the form is displayed. And Dhritarashtra wants to know, who is able to see this form? And Sanjaya says, only those who the Lord has permitted, only those who have the Divya Chakshu, who have gotten the divine 3D glasses, they can see this form. And he goes on to say, Arjuna is able to see this form. The higher planetary beings are able to see this form. And the devotees of Krishna in this world are able to see this form. The others are not able to see this form. And then finally, after we're hearing, and Dhritarashtra also wants to know what is the mood of Arjuna. You can see in this picture, Arjuna is astonished. He is almost terrified by this form. Suddenly, imagine before you appears this tremendous form which is showing past, present, and future, and the whole universe, the whole planetary system he can see within the form. We can't even imagine what this form is like. But Krishna is displaying his divinity by showing this form to Arjuna and us. So then finally, gathering up courage, shivering and shaking. See, Arjuna is a great warrior. He was able to defeat everyone on the planet and beyond with his strength, with his amazing virtue of being, brave and having the skill of the greatest fighter at that time. But he is shaking in fear. That is how tremendous this form is, terrifying this form is. And he describes who all he can see. He is able to see the demigods, he is able to see Shiva, Brahma, all the different Saptarishis and the sages. And the form he describes has many arms, many bellies, many mouths, many eyes, many crowns, and many clubs. Until where is the form going? He can't even find the beginning, middle, or the end of this form, ladies and gentlemen. It is spreading everywhere he sees. The form is truly infinite, and he cannot see the beginning or the end. Very amazing display. And this is what perhaps it looked like. This is a artist rendering of how the form looked like. And one amazing thing about this form is it was conscious. If you're watching television and let us say the father is watching some sporting event, and then the son comes and he wants to change to the cartoon channel. This happens in our home also. You have to take the remote and change the channel. Whereas in this form, this display, Arjuna need not do anything to change the channel to what he is saying. His consciousness becomes tied to this conscious form, and whatever he wants to see appears in this form. For example, he begins to focus on one part of the form because it suddenly attracts his eyes. And this part of the form he calls Ugra Rupani, a very terrible, very terrifying part of the form. And suddenly, as his consciousness wants to see that part of the form, the vision zooms into that. Just like in a computer system, you can use zoom function and zoom into a part of a picture. Just like that, Arjuna is able to, without any interface, just from his consciousness, able to zoom into that form. And this Ugra Rupani scares him. And he tries to describe in verses 19 to 23 what is this Ugra Rupani, the specific part of the universal form which is terrifying. The eyes of the Ugra Rupani are the sun and the moon, he says. There is blazing fire from the mouth of the Ugra Rupani. And the whole universe is burning, he is saying. All people in the universe are scared according to Arjuna in this vision. The demigods are surrendering unto Krishna. Some are afraid, they are holding hands and praying. The great Maharishis and the Siddhas even are saying, Swasti, Swasti, let there be peace, Swasti. Everyone is terrified, ladies and gentlemen, seeing this part of the form. And everyone is looking at the universal form with amazement, and they are extremely distracted. It is not an easy thing to behold this Ugra Rupani. Perhaps it looks something like this. And Arjuna accepts, he worships Krishna with awe and reverence, and he says, I am also disturbed. I am very fearful of this form. Please help me. Let me no longer be afraid. Please be merciful to me. I can't keep my balance seeing this form. And another thing he sees as part of this form is all the opposing army, all the different warriors, Bhishma, Drona, Karna, the sons of the Dhritarashtra, the Kauravas, even the chief warriors on his side, on Pandava's side, they are all running into the teeth of this form, and they are being smashed into a big chutney. And this is described in verses 28 to 32. Analogies are given. One is, this is like the rivers are merging into the ocean. So rivers eventually merge into the ocean. And if you see, there is some turbulence at the point of merging. If you've ever been to a point of confluence like that. But it is generally peaceful. And he also gives the example of moths running into fire. Moths being attracted to fire sometimes mistakenly go into the fire and are burned. So these two analogies are very relevant. The rivers merging into the ocean are compared to people in the Kurukshetra battle, the warriors in the Kurukshetra battle, who have reached the natural end of their life, like Bhishma and Drona, who are elderly. See, Bhishma is 4 generations older than the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So he's quite elderly. He is the son of Shantanu and Ganga, and he is 4 generations older than the Pandavas. So he's quite elderly, reaching the natural end of life. So his death in this war will be like the river merging into the ocean. But very interestingly, the example of the moths is given. So all of us, when we are born, we receive a particular kind of body, genetics, and health. Of course, we can supplement it with our effort to keep ourselves healthy and so on. But there is a life period which we get at the time of birth. But if we act against the laws of nature, if we act cruelly, if we act, if we perform heinous crimes, for example, the Kauravas tried to disrobe and insult an innocent woman, Draupadi, the wife of the Pandavas, in open assembly. And that is one of the grave sins, is insulting a woman's honor, taking away her, forcefully taking away her honor and chastity. And hence the Pandavas are compared to the moths who are willingly dying at a young age, even though they have more life to do. If we perform heinous acts, this is a lesson for us. If we don't act with virtue, our lifespan will be shortened. This is the teaching in the Bhagavad Gita. Then Arjuna asks two questions. Akyahi me ko bhavan ugra rupo. Who are you, O Ugra Rupa? Vijñātum ichchami. What is your mission? Arjuna is now getting bewildered. He's getting so scared that he is not able to see the point of this Vishwarupa. It seems so terrifying, especially the Ugra Rupa seems so terrifying that he wants to know who are you and what is your mission. And then the seminal verse Krishna speaks. This verse was repeated by Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, the scientist who led the team, Manhattan Project team, which developed the atomic bomb, which was dropped at that time in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. And when he saw the devastation that his invention had performed, he quoted from the Bhagavad Gita, Kalosmin loke kshaya prakrit prakrito. Time I am the destroyer of the worlds. Krishna, in the form of time, destroys everything, Prabhus and Matajis. Today I have this body. I am 39 years old. With time, slowly this body will degrade. Maybe when I am 70, 80, it will completely degrade and die. And Krishna performs that activity through his energy, eternal time. Kalosmin loka shaya krit pravrto. And I have come here to destroy all people. And Robert Oppenheimer became very depressed that his invention has caused so much devastation for people. Never the point of science or scientist is to cause destruction. We should try to use that tool to support life in this world, to make life better in this world. And he was just disappointed what his invention has ended up with. And he was quoting this verse from the Bhagavad Gita. So Arjuna wanted to know when Krishna said, I have come here to destroy all people, whether Krishna will destroy his own brothers and himself. To which Krishna said, I won't destroy everyone. I will protect paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. I come yuga after yuga in order to protect the innocent, destroy the miscreants, and re-establish dharma. Krishna said in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And that is coming to fruition via this universal form vision here. True to his word, at the end of the Kurukshetra battle, 10 people survived the war. 5 Pandava, there were more than 8 million warriors in this war by some estimates, and only 10 people survived. The Pandavas survived. Satyaki, who was a disciple of Arjuna, who was a Yadava, who was in the family of Krishna himself, he survived. He was a great warrior. In some ways, he was even a better warrior than Arjuna. Yuyutsu, who was on the side of the Pandavas, he was born from Dhritarashtra. But when Gandhari was pregnant with the Kauravas, Dhritarashtra had a son with a maid servant, that was Yuyutsu. And Yuyutsu was very virtuous. He sided with the Pandavas and he survived the war. Ashwatthama, the son of Dronacharya, very famously survived the war. Kritavarma, who was the head of the army of the Yadus. So I described in the introduction itself, when Duryodhana and Arjuna before the war, they went to Krishna and they asked Krishna to become part of their respective armies. Krishna said, I am not going to take sides. Because Arjuna is younger and the older person has to give up priority to the younger person, I will give Arjuna the choice. You can either take me, but I will come, I will not fight, I will not take up any weapons, but I will be with you. Or you can take up my entire army. Krishna had an army which was so big, one Akshohini size it was. You can look up what is an Akshohini. Akshohini has many tens of thousands of soldiers, including on horses, on elephants, on chariots, sword carriers, club carriers, and so on. And so many weapons, celestial weapons, and so on. So either you can take my army or you can take me. The head of that army was Kritavarma. The commander of that army was Kritavarma. And he survived. Arjuna, of course, chose to take Krishna because of his love for him, whereas Duryodhana was delighted to have the army. So this is a choice we have in life also, ladies and gentlemen. We can either have love of God or we can fakely try to be the proprietor of material things. Duryodhana thought the opulence of the army that he can have on his side was greater than God himself, whereas Arjuna wanted God on his side. That is our choice also. Kritavarma survived, and Kripacharya, who we all have heard of him, great Brahmin who was also a great warrior. He was on the side of the Kauravas. He also survived. Everybody else, from Drona to Bhishma to the Kauravas, even the sons of the Pandavas, everyone else were destroyed by Kalosmin Loka Shayakrit Pravrittu. If all are going to die anyway, why are you asking me to fight? Very, very important question. If Krishna has planned destiny, then why should we act? Can't we just go sit in the forest and meditate and not perform our duty? In the 33rd verse of this 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives a seminal instruction to Arjuna. Seminal instruction. Please listen carefully to this. Nimitta matram bhava savya sachin. Krishna says to Arjuna, just be an instrument. For us also, ladies and gentlemen, in life, our role is to be an instrument of God. That's all. We should go about life performing our duties, always thinking of God. Out of love for Him, we perform activities as an instrument. So, what does an instrument do? An instrument does what the master wants him to do, what pleases the master. A scissors, if I want to cut this piece of paper and I have a scissors, if I instruct the scissors to cut this way, it will not go cut that way, it will cut this way only. Because this is what I need as the master of the scissors and not something else. And this is what pleases me. Just like the Nimitta Matram Bhava Savya Sachin. Savya Sachin refers to a great archer who can shoot arrows with his both hands. Arjuna was called many beautiful names by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Savya Sachin was one of them. Nimitta Matram Bhava Savya Sachin. So I have already arranged the result. Just perform your duty and you will get the result. And then Arjuna says out of his humility, if we have some talents and if we know we can do something, we become boastful. But this is the quality of a devotee, ladies and gentlemen. Like Arjuna, he doesn't get boastful. He is always humble and he says, you really think I have the powers to kill all of them? Of course, your Savya Sachi, don't be disturbed or afraid. I am with you, you can kill all of them. And you can imagine the mood of Dhritarashtra as he is hearing this from Sanjaya. As this vision has unfolded and as he can see the mood of Arjuna, he is becoming more and more fearful for the death of his children. And like a good servant, without sugarcoating, Sanjaya is giving this description of what is happening in the battlefield. He's saying, shivering, Arjuna bowed repeatedly with folded hands, and then he spoke in a stuttering voice. And then beautiful verses, 11 verses from 36 to 46. I encourage all of you to pick up the Bhagavad Gita or go to Veda Base, where the entire Bhagavad Gita is online, and read these 11 verses to understand how to pray. Like I said, in order to overcome envy, we glorify the object, the ultimate object of worship, Krishna. That is verses 36 and 38. Krishna doesn't need our glorification. He is Atma Rama. He is fully self-satisfied in himself. But for our benefit, we glorify him. We understand his qualities and we glorify him through those understandings. And then verses 38 and 40, Arjuna pays obeisance. Very important part of prayer is to submit ourselves. 41 to 44, we will see he seeks forgiveness. And 45 to 46, he requests something of Krishna. So after glorifying and paying obeisances, Arjuna says, thinking of you as my friend, I have harshly addressed you, O Krishna, O Yadava, O my friend, not knowing your glories. Please forgive whatever I may have done in madness or in love. So this is the nature of what happens when we see the universal form of the Lord, is we understand his unlimited prowess, unlimited strength, unlimited beauty, unlimited intellect, and all of the six opulences in full, that we get a mood of awe and reverence towards God. Just like a father forgives the son for because of too much intimacy, the son might be irreverential to the father, but the father forgives that. Or a friend forgives a friend, or a wife forgives a husband, or a husband forgives a wife. Just in that way, Krishna forgave Arjuna for being irreverential, because their relationship was a relationship of love. Adrishtapurvan histosmi drishtva. After seeing this universal form, I am gladdened, but at the same time my mind is disturbed with fear. Please reveal again your beautiful, enchanting form, O Krishna. And then Krishna asks, which form would you like me to reveal? And he says, your four-handed form with helmeted head and with club and wheel and conch and lotus flower. In the four-handed form as Vishnu, Krishna has a club, a wheel, a conch, and the lotus flower in each of his four hands. So Krishna displays the Vishwarupa, the universal form, the Chaturbuja Rupa, the four-handed form, and the Dvija Rupa, which is the two-handed form. And Krishna declares in the 52nd verse of the 11th chapter that Sudur Darsham, which is very, very difficult to get darshan of or get sight of, is actually the two-handed form. The two-handed form is higher than the four-handed, and the universal form, Krishna declares. Arjuna immediately wants to know what is the qualification to see this two-handed form. Because Arjuna can see even when Krishna was present on this earth, there were persons who couldn't see him as God. They were atheists, or they were misunderstood in one form or the other, and they couldn't see him as God. And Krishna asks, is it study of the Vedic literatures? Is it austerities? Is it charity? Is it worship? What is it that is the qualification to see you in this form? And Krishna declares very, very important, Bhaktya Tvi Ananya. So undivided devotion, Ananya Bhakti, undivided devotion to me or undivided love for me is how you can understand this. Without that, you cannot enter into the mysteries of my understanding, Krishna says. Very interesting, no? If you have a lover in this world, if you have a person, an object of love in this world, it has to be undivided love for it to be pure, right? If I say I have 10 girlfriends and I love them all purely, it is very difficult to digest that that love would be pure, right? If I have only one, so Krishna is saying the one ticket, that the only ticket to achieving the realization of me, understanding of me, and ultimately achieving me, conquering me, is undivided love, undivided, ananya bhakti. So this is a theme of the Bhagavad Gita, which is strongly established by Krishna. Is he declares that undivided love unto him is the price for attaining him. So in summary, I've spoken a lot. Thank you for your patience. Just quickly, I'll summarize. Begins with Arjuna in the 11th chapter begins with Arjuna expressing his gratitude to Krishna for his anugrahaya uttana, we saw, and then he requests Krishna to show his cosmic universal form. Krishna first gives him a trailer by a verbal narration, and then we see Sanjaya describing the universal form. Then Krishna himself describes the universal form. And Krishna also shows the Kala Rupa and Ugra Rupa. And Arjuna wants to know what is the mission of this Kala Rupa. And Krishna says, time I am the destroyer of everyone in this world. Very important understanding. And then we see the beautiful prayers of Arjuna from verse 36 to 46, 11 verses. And finally, we also see the four-handed form of Krishna, which is very beautiful. But we also see that Sudurdarsham is the most rarest sight is the two-handed form as Shama Sundara. And Krishna declares that only by Ananya Bhakti, pure devotion unto him, one can have the eyes to see this two-handed form. So chapter 11, hopefully you all were able to follow. Please excuse if there were any faults in my presentation. I'm also learning with all of you. I've read the Bhagavad Gita a couple of dozen times, but by no means am I expert or a realized person. But as a service, I'm doing this. Hope it was helpful. Any questions, comments, thoughts, discussions, please? I will wait. It's a very wonderful chapter, 11th chapter. Breaks our misconceptions. So it takes time to digest this 11th chapter in my personal, albeit limited experience.
Hey Prakash, this is Nilesh. I was just going to say that, this chapter is something for us materialistic beings on this earth, very hard to take in because it's going beyond our imagination, limitations, and beliefs. And I think we can only digest this chapter from probably a lifelong of belief and prayers and having the oneness. It's going to take a long time to be in part of this chapter compared to the other messages that we've had so far.
My experience is similar, Nilesh, but if we get a tinge of realization in this chapter, it goes a long way in understanding the unlimited nature of Krishna. His features are all aneka, as Sanjaya declared.
Yeah. I mean, as you were describing everything, I'm trying to get a grasp of it. The other chapters were easier. Not that I'm all fully immersed in them yet. I'm learning, as you can tell. I'm a beginner or whatnot, but you can at least digest the message and say, okay, this is what I need to get from it. But for this one, it's like so into imagination, or so much into the bigness or wholeness. You really have to keep thinking about it more and more and more. And then, like you said, we may only get 0.1%, but that's more than everybody else can get, or what we should be getting. So that's my take on this chapter.
Very wonderfully said. How does the infinitesimal understand the infinite? Right, that in itself is a big question. Only if the infinite reveals himself to us, we can understand. Arjuna couldn't have understood the universal form without Krishna having revealed the whole thing to him, not only from the outside but also from within the heart. So, as we meditate on the Mahamantra, we call out the holy names of Krishna, we serve him, and we try to be Nimitta Matram Bhava Sachin, which is an instrument. By being a dentist, Nilesh, you can be an instrument in the hands of Krishna. And by doing that, he will reveal the understanding of the 11th chapter to you and to all of us.
Thank you. Thank you for expressing that to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nilesh. Anything else? Thank you so much. I appreciate all your patience and your faithfully coming with us on this journey. We have 7 wonderful chapters left. Next week, we'll have the 12th chapter, which is very different in mood from the 11th chapter. The 12th chapter is the description by Krishna of who is dear to him, the devotee, the qualities of a Mahatma. Only 20 verses, short chapter. And Yamuna Prabhu was an expert at explaining it, will be presenting it to us. So I look forward to that.
Prakash, thank you again for this presentation, and have a nice week.
Thank you. Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you, Sujata. Thank you, Ramasharna Prabhu. And Rakesh, Keshav Gopal Prabhu also joined. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Take care and have a nice week.
Thank you. Thank you.